Currently, Ken Carson has millions of monthly listeners, but before Opium was a thing, and everyone knew him as Playboi Carti's disciple, now he's getting posted by Lil Uzi. What I'm trying to say is he's very well known by most new generation rap fans, especially fans of Uzi, Carti, and the rest of the newer generation of rappers. But before Ken Carson was X-Man or Teen X, he was a Barbie. Before he was any of these things, he was really no one. He was just some random dude hanging out with 808 Mafia through a friend, who's now his DJ and one of his main producers, Lil 88, TM88's nephew. And he used to hang out with Southside and TM88 through Lil 88, and I guess the rest of 808 Mafia. He actually met Carti for the first time through Southside. Southside's a really influential producer from Atlanta that has worked with everyone. TM88 is kind of the same. He produced EXO Tour Life. But during this time, Ken wasn't really doing anything. He was just making music, but it's all lost, and what's left is horrible. So let's just assume that the lost music was also bad. Like, don't even try to find it at all. It's honestly really, really, really bad. I have no idea what Carti saw in him at the time. So let me take you back to when I first got introduced to him, back in 2020. It's kind of rare, at least for me, to see an artist go from zero to well-known in just a couple of years, and where I'm not so young I can barely remember the beginning. Ken Carson's career was different. I remember it pretty clearly. Back in 2020, I first got introduced to him the day Yale dropped, through these two producers, Starboy and Out of Town, the guys who produced Yale. I was a huge fan of their production and just saw they were promoting Ken Carson. By the way, Ken was a nobody at the time, and Starboy and Out of Town were pretty well known, at least among producers, and I was really confused why they were posting this guy. It turns out Ken was Carti's artist, and they produced that song. At the time when they posted him and dropped Yale, I remember all I could find was this one V-File singles, I think, and he looked like this. His head was more rectangular shaped because of his haircut. He was trying to look like Ken from Barbie, I think. I also remember checking him out, and there was barely any music out from this guy. He had a song with Mexico Dro and some other stuff produced by 808 Mafia 2. Ken Carson is named the guy in Barbie, by the way. That was Barbie's boyfriend or something, and that was the guy he was trying to portray, and he was like a handsome dude. I feel bad saying this, but Ken Carson would later get bullied and seriously made fun of by annoying Carti fans for being ugly, and would get called Goomba after gaining a little weight for his smile, which is kind of ironic considering he based himself off of Ken from Barbie. So back then, that was his look. And I remember checking out Yale thinking it was a good song. I was kind of surprised it was produced by Starboy and Out of Town since it was literally a Pure beat. It turns out Pure and Ken had beef, something about Pure saying he wouldn't work with Ken because Ken wasn't on his level. Kind of egotistical and really bit him in the butt, because now Ken Carson's music career is way larger than Pure's ever was, and Pure isn't even a part of Carti's camp really. Not to take anything away from what he's accomplished. But other than Yale, I didn't really like much of his older music. I actually thought it was pretty bad. Like, some of it was really, really bad. Prior to Yale, he had a project out, Boy Barbie, almost completely produced by Lil 88. I liked his song with Lancey on Boy Barbie, What You Know. That song's hard. I recommend you check it out. The rest are just eh. After that, he dropped Teen X, his first project under Carti. And as a project, it was pretty good. It was executively produced by Starboy and Out of Town. But it was just that, decent, and at this point, it was really just Pure type beats that were being made by Starboy and Out of Town. Not the Ken Carson type beats that they're known for today, that they pioneered, or really I should say created. By the way, they really saw the vision, because the story of how they started working with Ken Carson is just they heard he was messing with Carti or the other way around, and sent Ken some stuff that was similar to something unreleased he made, which surprised them, of course, and they just started working, eventually FaceTiming every day. That tape, Teen X, was actually pretty good. It has specific sound, it wasn't too long, and songs like Pissed Off, Yale, and Why are songs that I really liked at the time. He was also posting his music to the Sicko SoundCloud, which is Ian Connor's brand. Then he dropped Teen X Relapsed, once again executive produced by those Dutch guys, Starboy and Out of Town, and they killed it. They really helped Ken Carson a lot because this time the music was cool, of course, but the beats were different. And they'd start a whole new wave among producers. The type of beats labeled Ken Carson type beats were kind of created by them. I'm talking about songs like High as Shit and Butterfly, where the beats were completely different from the past, but still fit Ken's sound. I remember hearing Butterfly and High as Shit specifically and thinking, these beats are crazy. So today, this is what fans call his Teen X era. If you're a fan of Carti, you'll know Carti and Future have a song on Whole Lotta Red called Teen X. One detail I have to point out, though, is he wasn't a teenager when he was calling himself this. He had just turned 20, so take that as you will. Honestly, I do think it's a little weird, but rappers are known to do stuff like that. Like, Lil Uzi had braces put on him, so he would look younger. Around this time, Ken Carson started to gain more buzz or hype. I think there were a couple of pictures of him and Cardi that were out now, and more people were starting to find out that Ken was Cardi's artist. He started growing dreads around this time too, and went from this to this. Jumped to 2021 and he had quite a lot of hype. It was no longer a secret that he was Cardi's artist. Yale was a pretty big song thanks to TikTok, and the whole new sound in the underground, at least the pocket that Ken Carson Yeat were in, fit Ken's sound perfectly because he kind of molded it. Pretty soon he started previewing a bunch of stuff and announced that his new album Project X was about to be dropping. And Project X is Ken's best project in my opinion. It's the perfect length. The album has a consistent sound, and he'd clearly grown from previous projects, and the album had multiple songs that were really good, like Till I Die and So What. After that, he dropped X, and I'm not sure if this was on purpose, but he dyed his hair like XXXTentacion and grew his hair out like X, and dropped his worst project. I liked a couple of the songs, but everything I listed that I liked about Project X was the opposite with X. This album was too long. It was practically the same. I mean, some songs like Freestyle 3 were cool, Intro was cool, and there's some other songs that I liked as well. But overall, it was underwhelming. It was still a good album though, if that makes sense. That brings us to today. He has millions of monthly listeners. He's touring, getting booked for big shows. He's the biggest artist in Opium, Cardi's label for now, alongside Destroy Lonely and Homicide Gang. So now I'm going to talk about some other aspects of his career, his image, Opium, his fans bullying him, and last but not least, his influence. Very recently, he's been getting criticism for how far he takes his image sometimes. He's been using some disturbing images to promote a certain aesthetic that other artists that are actually underground, like Yabajin, I don't know how to pronounce bro's name, have also used. He also got called out a while back for biting Cemetery in these pictures. And there's always been the whole thing, only dressed in black because he's Opium. And he used to also do this thing that was really cringe, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how no one told him it was mad cringe. He used to type with underscores, like with every word instead of spaces when he'd talk to people. There are even DMs with fans and he'd still be using the underscores, which I just thought was mad funny. Now he just uses another font, a little less cringe, but yeah, I guess if you're Opium, you gotta be mysterious and do stuff that middle schoolers think are cool. Speaking of stuff that middle schoolers think are cool, I want to talk about Opium and how Cardi promoted Ken Carson. Coming up, Cardi had cosigns that were crucial to his success, even dating back to Awful Records. If you're new and don't know what I'm talking about, too bad, I'm not explaining it, just Google it. As well as ASAP Mob specifically, ASAP Rocky really put on for Cardi very graciously. However, Cardi never did this for Ken Carson. In fact, other artists like Uzi have unironically posted Ken more than Cardi, and by more I mean more than zero, because Cardi has never publicly acknowledged Ken Carson is his artist. He just lets his fans find out through speculation. At first, I thought he was being selfish, but later I realized it was really smart. If Cardi said Ken was his artist back in his Teen X era, remember this guy? Everyone, and I mean everyone, would have said he was trash and they would have written him off. I think it would have been embarrassing for Cardi. And of course, it's not like Cardi at all to behave like that. Instead, he made it so that the most diehard fans, the ones that suck him off, would be the ones to find out about Ken first, creating a cult fan base. Then slowly but surely, Ken Carson grew at his own pace, which helped because his music wasn't that crazy at first, and that led to success. Looking back, this plan sounds pretty genius, and I know some of you guys are gonna say, I'm sure Cardi and the rest of Opium masterminded this. I'm just joking, of course, but it was probably on accident. I doubt they actually planned for it to work out like that. He was probably just being mysterious with how he is with everything. But despite his success, Ken Carson's career isn't perfect. No one's is. Throughout his career, the moment he gained a little bit of hype, I don't exactly remember when his fans started calling him this, but they started calling him Goomba after a Pokemon, and the way it started was someone said it and the internet just ran with it. It became a derogatory term. Imagine you post pictures and your comments are just flooded with your own fans calling you ugly. Someone even threw a Goomba plushie at him at a show. It reminds me of when Lucky started getting bigger a couple years ago, and the newer and TikTok fans, nothing against them, this is just a fact, had this weird infatuation with his lean belly, like they'd grab it at his shows, constantly talk about it online. It was definitely weird. Finally, Ken's influence is massive in the underground. There was a point in time where all you'd hear was Ken Carson type beats. Ken was on him, which they had a little beef over. They were everywhere. I'm not gonna give all the credit to Ken. Of course, Cardi dropping Whole Lotta Red made Ken sound more acceptable, so that's a given. But who really deserves most of the credit is Starboy and Out of Town, because no one was really copying the way Ken rapped. They were copying Starboy and Out of Town's beats egregiously. And it's unfortunate casual fans don't know these guys and how many trends they've set within production and rap over the past 3 years, as well as Luso. Overall, I like Ken Carson. He's a cool guy. I smile a lot in real life. It's like a weird habit, so we have that in common. He just makes good music and is a pretty chill guy. So I wish him the best. Have a nice day, and thanks for watching. See you next time.